challenges of global climate change, education can nurture an atmosphere of innovation that may help solve the practical problems to be confronted. It will also empower people to deliver their skills, develop them, understand inevitable transformations, and promote a culture of solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, adaptation is not solely about sectoral policies like agriculture, health, tourism, housing, and so on. Confronting climate change entails preparing people everywhere to act as responsible citizens in a world that needs to be protected if we wish to keep on enjoying its beauty and its richness. We often take our islands for granted because of its natural beauty, etc. But no man is an island, as was said by the famous John Donne in 1623. The passage from this meditation continues, "No man is an island entire unto itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." Speaking from an island or on an island, among so many islands, I would like to express before you my deep certainty that even islands are not islands. While climate change threatens the survival of populations by natural disasters, the extent of national borders via sea level rise, and the economic development of already vulnerable states, the Caribbean countries need to stick together. And as I go back to quoting a bit from Donne, in his later work called Meditation, "Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. Neither can we call this a begging of misery or a borrowing of misery, as though we were not miserable enough of ourselves, but must fetch in more from the next house in taking upon the misery of our neighbors." In this opening ceremony of our conference, let us keep in mind that its concern may sense in many other parts of the event. Wherever there are vulnerable countries and vulnerable people, working together at the regional level, developing networks, elaborating a common position is certainly worth it, taking due account of the region's social, political, geographical diversity. As a staunch advocate of international cooperation, I would also like to insist on the necessity of building solidarity among those who are most vulnerable and between those who have the capacity to help. In conclusion, I would wish to express my very sincere appreciation to the CARICOM states for their support of my election to the 35th session of UNESCO General Conference. Believe me, it's a great honor for me to serve my country, our sub-region as a whole. During the few months remaining in my tenure, I will continue to press for a promise I made during my inaugural speech and make sure that small states, in particular developing states, may have a voice in the decision-making of the organs of UNESCO. Over the past year, I was able to see several accomplishments by SIDS, Small Island Developing States, members on the executive board of UNESCO, and various other commissions. It is fair to say that their visibility has been enhanced. This particular conference is a good example of the achievement, and it's hoped that in the month of September, UNESCO will hold a very high-level conference on education and climate change in the Bahamas. I am convinced, therefore, that a foundation has already been laid, and the voice of small states would be enhanced at the 36th General Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, participants, I therefore urge governments to become more proactive, thereby making sure that the interests of the region will be strengthened and promoted. I wish you a very fruitful discussion. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, His Excellency, Dr. Davison Hepburn. And now we will have a poem by Mr. Stephen Smith.
Good morning, everyone. If I ruled the universe. I'd bring Pluto really close at summertime. From it, I'd make a wind blow a light chill over the Caribbean Isles, especially when it's most hot, like around lunchtime. If I ruled the universe, I'd put bad economies in reverse, make money irrelevant and put life first, make sure that no living organism again would ever have to hunger or thirst. Crime would cease to exist, seeing that the most reasons for theft and most murders are money itself. Money would be gone, problem solved. Then I'd replace the laws with ones that actually make sense to every color, race, and creed. Laws like these. No matter how you feel, every family member must hug and kiss each other every day. Working overtime would be illegal. And by law, every father has to take his children out to play. Love would be the first and last lesson taught at schools. And for once and for all, I'd outlaw all negative words, especially useless and fool. Cut off lest these words would be blessed and joined together to make useful. Great men would be measured by the size of their imagination, and women would be the head of creation, and the only punishment for anything would be education, because that's the only way that offenders will learn, hey, selfishness is just not an option. If I ruled the universe, global warming would be a welcome sauna in countries with cold winters that go away by spring, and nuclear waste would be limited to gas passed after a good meal. But we all know that's not too much of a problem. If I ruled the universe, animals would have human rights. Their homes would never be terrorized, and every single forest would be a national prize. Trees would be respected as just as intelligent as Einstein, and we'll combine minds until we find a solution that improves Earth's design instead of paving over Her Majesty with city lines. If I rule the universe, there would never be a first, second, or third world. There'll just be one world that we all live in. No more hungry people dying from bad living conditions. We would see that in terms of all of us, it always makes sense for us to be closer. I'll make sure that living life is no longer Darwinian, and that survival, get this, and that survival is a collaboration instead of a competition. Something as simple as The Lion King could teach you so much if you just open your heart and listen. And the CIA would be the CIFA, which means Central Intelligence for All, instead of just one country. Middle East and Middle West would be friends at last. If I ruled the universe, war would not even be a thing of the past. It would have never happened. I do not rule the universe. But if you did, what would you do? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, before we have the next speaker, who is a lady, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that today is International Women's Day. And if you will join me in congratulating all women for the 100th anniversary of International Women's Day, all the women in the audience, and indeed all the women in the world. Now we will have remarks by Ms. Pilar Alvarez Lasso. She's a UNESCO Assistant Director General for Social and Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to be in this opening ceremony for this UNESCO meeting on climate change in the Caribbean. Among the most urgent tasks for environmental science is the development of participatory models of adaptation, particularly in small islands developing states. In order to build resilient methods of adaptation, communities must come together in forums such as this to search for common ground and a common voice. UNESCO, as a laboratory of ideas, a capacity builder, and a standard setter, remains dedicated to facilitating the construction of a robust adaptation policy in the Caribbean and to contributing to the impressive advances in climate sciences that have already been made by Caribbean expert networks, non-governmental organizations, and local actors. Moreover, as an international organization with a specific ethical mandate, ethics has an essential contribution to make to science-based adaptation policies. It may not be obvious to all why ethics is relevant in this context. Suffice it to say that no policy can be based only on evidence, and that's coming from the social sciences in UNESCO, not only on evidence. Policies are necessarily based on values. In order to endow societies with the capacity to adapt to the transformations engendered by climate change, and in order to protect the Caribbean from environmental threats, we must first identify the precise nature of these transformations and forces. This calls for more and better knowledge, but equally for reflection on what is to be valued. But we need to be realistic. Climate change does not create a win-win situation. Difficult choices will need to be made, and those choices will reflect value commitments. Environmental ethics remind us that taking responsibility for our actions in response to climate change means constantly asking technical questions that are inseparably bound to larger questions of value, responsibility, solidarity. Ethics is not just a part of philosophy. It is an essentially pragmatic concern. Reflecting on the issues of climate change adaptation, I should like our chairperson said today, it is Women's Day, International Women's Day. The connection, of course, is not explicitly made in our program, but it is important for UNESCO because it has an objective to paying attention to the gender situation in the world. Our discussions here should be also addressed to the dimension of climate change upon the vulnerability and adaptation also for women. Creating resilient social systems depends on a deep consideration of the question of gender and global environmental change. We need to closely examine the gender-specific impacts of climate change and recognize how gender inequality reduces any given society's capacity to adapt and to be resilient. In other words, as long as women are disproportionately vulnerable to and affected by climate change, adaptation to environmental threats will remain imperfect. Women are not only environmental victims. We are effective agents of change in relation to both mitigation and adaptation. Women are knowledgeable, have local expertise, and are key drivers of social and scientific innovation. I have just used the word innovation, and I would not wish that to pass without notice. I can be more specific. Why innovation? Adaptation planning and policy need innovative thinking, innovative ways to imagine new social and technological possibilities, just as it imagines the worst that could happen. Beyond bringing the gender divide, innovation in environmental adaptation will require that we examine how the various sectors of social and political life are all bound together. The agenda of this meeting is designed to establish connections between Caribbean knowledge, action, and values. It is from this productive encounter, recognizing the diversity of circumstances, views, and values, that social innovation will emerge. This conference doesn't only have a theme, it also has a place. If we find ourselves today in St. Kitts and Nevis, it is because of the firm and generous support that UNESCO has received from several sources, from the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, including the personal commitment of the Prime Minister, who unfortunately was unable to attend in person. Please, Minister Condor, convey to him my personal thanks. I would like also to express my warmest thanks to the Friedrich Ebert Foundation for its financial support, which reaffirms their will to facilitating innovative and ethical models of adaptation. Financial contributions were also made by the Principality of Monaco and the Government of Mexico, for whose generosity I am extremely grateful. The commitment of non-Caribbean states to this meeting, and to all the issues that are related to the Caribbean or small island development states, is a reminder that what happens in this region is of significance for the whole world. A shared vision of what happens in the Caribbean for climate change adaptation will resonate with vulnerable populations everywhere. I believe this meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis and its neighbors means and can achieve an articulated vision and contribute to debates on climate change and its implications. Moreover, this meeting will provide a forum for deeper reflection on the Mauritius strategy for small island development states, and also reflect on the outcomes of COP16. It is a source of great satisfaction for UNESCO to be able to contribute in this regard, and I look forward with great interest to the results of this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lasso. And now I'm pleased to present the Honorable Sam Condor, Deputy Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, for the keynote address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. I am of the view that in large measure it is not coincidental that this two-day meeting is being held here in St. Kitts and Nevis. For I believe that as a developing small island state, we have accepted the UNESCO baton and are running with all that we are to finish well, to finish strong. Allow me please to highlight a few related pointers. We have laid a strong foundation in project and program performance. We have built capacity as we have institutionalized the Office of Secretary General, and Mr. Antonio Maynard, who serves in that capacity, has in the past also served on the UNESCO Executive Board. Mr. David Doyle, Honorary Counsel for St. Kitts and Nevis,